Humans, I apologize for this, but I'm going to give myself an hour and a half. And then I'm going to leave, and I'd like to stay, but I just, the circumstances of my life.
And I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. I will start with a roll call of council members to establish a quorum. Ryan,
Ryan Bender's here.
Laura Hilborn here.
Kelsey Parker here.
Kristen Woods here.
Ethan Wanacott here. Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We'll go ahead and go into the invocation. I'll read this full verse. This is our school. May peace dwell here. May the rooms be full of contentment. May love abide here. Love of one another, love of our school, and love of life itself. Let us remember that as many hands build a house, so many hearts build a school. Okay, that will take us into item 1.4. Does anybody have any agenda modification?
I have one I'd like to request, and I'll of course defer to the board. I would like us to move the closed session up to after the grade level report. Or potentially after the consent agenda, whichever might be more appealing to the group.
So my only concern with that, Laurel, is that we do have a guest here that's doing item 4.2.1 presenting for us.
So I have an idea that maybe we'll let our guests go first, like right after the consent agenda, and then you can still move the closed session up to Laurel and be.
That is a great idea.
The remainder of the discussion on the facility funding can come in as normal pace.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
No, that works great for me. So let's move item 4.2.1 to just after the consent agenda.
Well, I'm actually proposing to split it because I still want to talk about the rest of the stuff later.
I think item 4.2.1 is just the presentation of the funding, and then that'll leave item 4.2 under governance. Does that?
That makes sense.
Okay. I just want to make sure that that still accomplishes what you're looking for.
Yes,
So for clarification, 4.2.1 is going to after the consent agenda.
Yes, so that'll
Thank
go
you.
above item 3. Then we'll hear from our faculty, and then we'll move
Closed
item
session.
6, closed session.
Thank you.
To before item 4. So after
Okay.
faculty, we'll hear item 6, and then go into the remainder of item 4. I think that is pleasing to the board. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to move or pull from the consent agenda? All right.
We need a motion to approve it.
We do not. Okay, well then. That will take us to item 1.5. Are there any audience members to address the Charter Council on items that are not on the agenda? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Do we have anybody presenting questions in the chat? No, all right, you will then that will move us right into item 2, the consent agenda. When somebody is ready to make a motion, I will entertain it.
This is Kristen and I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Laurel seconds.
Kristen for your motion and Laurel for the second. I will call for the vote.
Right, take a second.
Laurel Hobart, aye.
Chelsea, aye.
Kristen, I.
Vicky, aye.
All right, motion passes. Okay, that will take us to now item 4.2.1. And the presentations of funding for the facility. And I do believe we have someone here presenting for that.
Yeah. Everybody hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
hold on 1 second. I'm on video there. Just realized that. Hey,
Yep.
everybody. My name is Ryan Eldridge. I'm a senior new business specialist with Charter School Capital. And for you that some of you may know Charter School Capital, I think Jim, we've worked with different clients and schools around in the past. But for the rest of you, just from a high level, who Charter School Capital is, we're a strategic partner with Charter Schools, a national company that has provided access to resources, money, and know-how to about 800 charter schools now across the country over about a 15-year period of time, serving upwards of about 2 million students at this time. And with that, the vision for Charter School Capital is that, we believe that all kids should have access to a nourishing environment so they can flourish. And the mission is to help people get where they're going. And for charter leaders, that really is just providing that money, the resources, to know how to create the thriving schools that they're trying to create. And we do that in a number of ways. One, through money to run your schools. The other is money to buy your schools. And then also kids to fill your seats. So we're kind of got a multitude of ways that we can work with schools depending on where they're at in their growth stage. My quick backstory before I let Kurt introduce himself is that I'm a father of 3 kids. I have recently just an 18-year-old graduate from high school. My story kind of began that I have about 25 years of business development in different industries. And right around the time that she was transitioning from elementary school into middle school, I was also kind of looking for a career outside of software or telemedicine type industries that had a little bit more social impact. I loved creating relationships, building relationships with people, but just didn't feel like the social impact was there. And so it coincided where I started to look for school options for my daughter, she wasn't the biggest social butterfly, very cliquey, in a lot of the big school type box settings. And for the most part, we started to investigate where she might have a better opportunity with a smaller environment and more focused attention. And that's when I discovered that charter schools existed. This was 9.5 years ago. And with that, we ended up making a decision to send her to a choice school through a lottery system. Much better environment for her where she really flourished. And then my 2 following kids also followed that same path. So with that, I interviewed with Charter School Capital. I sat down with the executive director at the time, the founder of the school, and he basically very charismatic individual, was very mission driven, and the founder of the company. And with that interview went well. I was inspired to kind of get back into the education sector. And with that, 9.5 years later, I'm still here. And I'd say the why behind all of it is the fact that we're able to provide these resources and financing to people that are innovative school leaders providing great educational models for students. And so that's me in a nutshell. And I'll turn it over to Kurt real quick.
Thanks, Ryan. So my name's Kurt Nilsson. I'm the president of Charter School Capital. I've been with the company for 8 years. And I'll go right into my why, and that is what really gets me excited and what gives me energy is realizing human potential. And so Charter School Capital's vision of creating a nourishing school environment so all kids can flourish is a great way to do that. I would say briefly, my background prior to Charter School Capital is really a tale of two cities. The first, going back a ways, is about 5 years in consumer finance. And then after that, for about a decade and a half, like a lot of you, as a builder and runner of schools of choice, which included both charter schools and private schools. So I've been spending my whole professional career for the last couple of decades, and specifically with Charter School Capital over the last 8 years, trying to work with schools to help them get where they're trying to go. And I just want to say very much appreciate having you and having Ryan and I here today to help your school get where it's trying to go.
Okay. So with that, I am assuming I have the ability to share screen here, right? We had put together a presentation, and we've had the opportunity to kind of run through it previously with Susan, just to give her some insight. And the premise of this presentation was that we had a call, we went through what we call a discovery call with Susan to understand where the school has been, where they are today, and where they're trying to go. And through that, what we like to do is do a playback to allow you to kind of see what we heard, to make sure that we're all on the same page. We understand the needs. And then with that, you know, that we can give you a high level kind of solution path forward based on the needs of the school with the facility. And so with that, everybody can see the Forever Home screen there. Okay. So first, real quick, we're just going to reflect back what we heard in that original conversation. We can discuss how we can provide a path to ownership through Charter School Capital's model. Obviously making it so that the school can stay focused on the students and the educational process and not have to be inundated with the actual acquisition or build out of a property and taking care of all of that. And then just making sure that you feel prepared for what comes next. And I will kind of tee this up with the idea that the idea behind a playback is this is very high level. It's not meant to get into the weeds with numbers and details of finance, and we haven't requested any financial information from the school at this point, but we're basing it off of what we know, you know, based on students account, students enrolled, and affordability looks like for most charter schools. And at the end of it, if everybody agrees that they'd like more detailed information, then what we would ask is, okay, if we want to go to a more formal presentation, we set up a, you know, a second review together and take the next steps. So with that, I'll first start with what we heard. And Blue Oak School has been actually operating in Chico since 2001, providing a free Waldorf education to students in grades TK through 8. Waldorf in particular is a model that always has an audience and a pool of families that are very interested in the Waldorf education model. They offer the developmentally appropriate and experiential and academically rigorous approach to education. The focus of it is really the need for kids to have imagination and a sense of truth and feeling and responsibility are the main focuses of the model. And so with that, some of the distinguishing factors include the looping teacher model, where the students stay with the same teacher for a period of time. Really establishing a really calm and inspiring classroom atmosphere, you know, with furniture with natural materials, soothing colors, you know, a lot of outdoor activity with field trips, art as a teaching tool, and musical arts being offered, Spanish at all levels, and again, lots of movement and activity for the students. Currently, the school has about 265 kids in grades TK through 8, with plans to grow back to about 300. And if the addition of the preschool occurs, that number could float up to about 310. Chico's obviously a very competitive charter area, and with the COVID and the last couple of years, the student enrollment has been impacted and has taken a dip. And so the idea is to rebuild that back. Right now, the current facility challenges is that the building that you're currently in is just too large and it's not very mission aligned. It has a lot of blacktop, not a lot of grass or woods or trails or trees necessarily. And the ownership is not very mission aligned. They're pretty strict and non-supportive regarding, maintenance issues, tenant improvements. There's 2 years left on the current lease through July of 25, which gives you some time to take that next step towards a forever home. And currently the base rent on that is about $50,000 a month. With that, currently the school has for years been looking for a mission aligned forever home. And looking right now, based on the lack of available properties of existing structures with the right type of land around it, the school is looking at the ground up construction model, purchasing a piece of land and then building from ground up. However, obviously open to other solutions should a property bill, pop up on the market that actually could be a remodel of an existing structure on property. And what's causing this conversation is that originally, I think the school had some plans with Turner Agassi to go ahead and develop and build a site and had worked through that process quite a bit. And now that option is no longer available. And so now you're looking and seeking a new partner to be able to do, and replace what Turner had been originally offering. So with that in a nutshell, just real high level, does anybody have anything to add or delete from that? Or do we feel like we kind of got it and accurate at this point? Okay. And then I'll go move. So with that in mind, after the conversation with Susan, we ended up at a couple of different options. One is that the option to purchase a piece of property, a piece of dirt, and actually get the entitlements and then build ground up construction as option one. And option two would be to locate a property in the area that we could actually buy an existing structure on a property, obtain a CUP and permit, and then be able to actually renovate the building to occupy about 310 pre-K through 8 students. And so with that, option one specifically, what we would do is come in, purchase the land, build the building, and then lease it back to Blue Oak and start this path to ownership that we'll discuss in a minute. The time frame on that looks where if we could acquire this piece of property, say in November, so sourcing a piece of a property and then coming up with the design, in the between February time frame to create the schematic and design development process, while we're then working through entitlements and construction through June of 24 through June of 25, with the idea that we would be able to open the doors in fall of 25. And, we can provide even the management on that project as desired by the school. The option two building is locating a piece of property where we would actually purchase an existing structure, go through the conditional use permit requirement for schools, assuming that property does not already come with a conditional use permit, and then get the building permits by June of 24 and take the same approach where we acquire it, get the permits, and then start to build out the capacity for 310 students with the idea that we're opening in the fall of August 25. So in both cases, path A or path B or option one or option two is that we're shooting for an opening of the fall of 25 either way. The idea behind this is that Charter School Capital has the ability to lead the financing of either project in a rough neighborhood of about $6 to $7 million estimated as far as facilities capacity financing right now. Again, this is very high level, back of the napkin. What we're saying is 265 students in California. We look at this and say roughly we think of around $6 to $7 million that we could finance based on those numbers. That doesn't take into consideration future growth or the potential for 3 to 310 students or, detailed analysis of your financials. But on average, that's what we're looking at. And then the idea would be that you grow to full capacity while maintaining control of your building. So you open the doors, whether it be at 265, and then we grow it up to 300 or 310, or we could even potentially assist you with that. And then ideally what we're going to do is transition that building into Wonderful Foundations, which is a separate entity, 501c3 partnership that we have that gives you a path to ownership and some other benefits as well. And we'll get into Wonderful a little bit further down the line. So with that, are we clear? Does that give you a good picture of the two options? Okay. So with this, Kurt, do you want to kind of touch on option one here? And
Yeah, so we wanted to take what option one looks like in potential or feasibility one step further and put a little depth behind it. Still back of the envelope numbers, but just what we wanted to try and do is to say, hey, relative to option one, the way you were thinking about it and the way Ryan laid out, does it seem like it's possible given the resources that are available as we understand it, and then also how much we think it'll cost. So what you see real briefly here, you see a very, very simple table of sources, basically the money that's required to fund the project, and then uses, specifically what does it take to get the land, what does it take to build the building. And the idea behind this approach is that, those two columns are close enough, or hopefully the sources are greater than the uses in a way that it feels like it could be possible. And so to break it down a little bit more under the sources side, the total there between, as we understand it, access that you may have to money that comes through the district, probably to acquire land. I think I got this right, that could be as much as $3 million. And as Ryan had indicated on the prior page, that the financeable amount from the school, given what it could afford in a lease, very, very high level estimate, feels like about $6.5 million. Could be a little higher, could be lower, and again, just an estimate. So if you put those two things together, that gets you to a total of about 9.5 million on the sources side. And then on the uses side, there are a bunch of elements that go into bringing the project to bear. So one is construction, entitlements, and then the actual land. And we kind of lined it out this way because if you look at the an estimate of what land as we understand it might be in Chico, we did some work, it's $8 a foot. And so a broad estimate is that land may be in the ballpark of $1.5 million or so. And so as we understand it, if you're able to access some district funds, then that amount could clearly be covered from the district capital that comes with that. And maybe even the entitlements as well. And so then what that leaves us is that top right-hand piece around what would the construction of the building potentially cost, and just based on what we're seeing for costs of new construction per square foot and the amount that at 300 students your school would probably require, feels like construction could be in the tune of 7.5 to 8 million. So when you look at that all, and when we look at it, and this is very early on, just trying to say, hey, conceptually, could this work? If you'd say, no way that would work, or absolutely, or maybe, this kind of feels like in the maybe category that it's possible option one at very, very first blush without looking at any financials or going deeper. Feels like, from a sources and uses perspective, looks like it could work. And so we wanted to, in just providing a path, Ryan had gone through option 1 and 2, and we just wanted to go a little bit deeper on option 1 to see back of the envelope if it's feasible, and it feels like it could be potentially feasible. So any questions or thoughts about that? Again, just high level, but part of what we're trying to do here is to say, does it feel like it's got a chance? And it feels like it does.
And then I would say, and then there's, some other factors as a little, asterisk note at the bottom. Like we didn't even look into if we were able to capture, say, for instance, SB 740 funds as well, lease assistance program in California, if you're using the district capital, could you still theoretically potentially be able to get that lease assistance as well? So again, these would be things that are on a next step. If everybody likes what they hear and they want to dive deeper, we can dive into it a little bit later. So with that, the idea between where we would go is we would go with the premise of trying to get this project started or an acquisition of a piece of land or a property by November 23. We would actually be able to lease the building through a sale leaseback approach where we purchase it, we finance it, we do all the construction. So we're trying to limit the payments or the costs by the school as much as possible. So no out-of-pocket expenses in theory of as we take this approach. The idea is that we can finance it all and then actually establish like a 20-year triple net lease with options to extend to 40 years. It's just automatically in there 4 or 5 year renewal options. So right off the bat, you have a 40-year commitment from a strategic partner that doesn't leave the scene once we do a building. We're actually in here for the long haul to be able to assist you in other ways all the way through the process. And you would have a predetermined rent schedule. There's no surprises or, something that turns the escalation process up very quickly in a short period of time, forcing you to have to then go find additional financing at a later date. This would be a 40-year predetermined rent schedule that you'd know ahead of time, and it's going to be based on the acquisition cost and any development cost or tenant improvements that we provide. So we look at it as a holistic all-in number, buy land for X, build for X, and then collectively that's what the rent would be based off of that all-in number. So, and then Kurt, you want to discuss Wonderful?
Yeah, and I think it's come up as a concept, but we wanted to spend a little bit more time and introduce how Wonderful Foundations can bring benefits to the school by way of being a solution for the overall project. So Wonderful Foundations is a mission-aligned, not-for-profit foundation whose sole mission is to help charter schools succeed. And so under our model, and I think as Ryan had talked about a little bit, Charter School Capital acquires the building once, and whether it's built or one that is purchased and built out from a TI perspective. And then Charter School Capital transitions the actual asset, the physical building, into a structure that is owned by Wonderful Foundations. And so the reason why that is something that's under our model is that it provides benefits back to the school that they can reinvest in themselves. And so specifically the second line here, there's a giving fund through Wonderful Foundations where annually the school is able to access resources that it can reinvest into its school. So of the 21 schools that you see here that are already in Wonderful Foundations, some of them have used giving funds to pay back to teachers. Others have built out science equipment. Some have used it for their music room, but it really allows the school to access resources and then reinvest in its school. The second is to draw from a capital expenditure fund. And so Ryan, I think, had mentioned that it's a triple net lease under our structure. And so this allows the school to access funds to reinvest in the building. So two benefits that the school is able to partake in that allows it to further enhance its mission and really move the school forward. And the third is that the building ultimately at the end of the term and broadly through Wonderful Foundations, the vehicle is tax exempt financing with a term that's about 30 years. But at the end of the term, the building is gifted to the school in such a way that it has the school free and clear. And so high level, again, Wonderful Foundations is a structure that Charter School Capital uses to bring benefits to the school in the form of a giving fund, a capital expenditure fund, and gifting the school back to the school at the end. So if you take that all together, and again, this is introducing a little bit of how we work with schools to get them into their forever home. If you take everything you've heard so far, the idea of how we're trying to work with schools like Blue Oak is to turn rent payments into a future investment. So kind of in recap, we buy and or build the building and lease it back to the school. The school has very known and predictable payments whether that includes expansion today or expansion in the future. It has a path to ownership and access to free funds that it can reinvest itself. And then Ryan and I and the charter school capital team wake up first thing in the morning and go to bed last thing at night, thinking about how we can help charter schools. So the benefit of working in partnership is that you have a team of folks that are always trying to support the schools they work with, whether it is money to buy the school, money to run the school, or kids to fill the school, the 3 products that Ryan had introduced at the beginning. And then in going through the process, what's really important is that you have a team that's going to lead you through that. A lot of you are, probably all of you are focused to make sure the academic experience and how the students are progressing through their school is the first and foremost mission you have. So partnering with someone like Charter School Capital allows you to have a set of resources that can take the lead in getting into the building and making sure it's outfit so the students can ultimately learn and flourish. Okay, any questions on that from anybody?
Anybody have questions?
Do we get like a specifics on the actual path to ownership? I know it's stated there that there is a path. What is the path?
So the path specifically, and see if this answers your question, the building is first purchased by Charter School Capital and is typically owned for about a year. Then the path is the building is sold into Wonderful Foundations, and that financing vehicle is a tax-exempt bond for 30 years. And once it's in Wonderful Foundations, the school is paying rent. And then at the end of that term, typically 30 years, the building becomes the school, the schools.
I missed the last part. Thank you.
Does that help by way of just clarifying and kind of crosswalking from through the different steps?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, go ahead. Kurt, if the school finds a way to accelerate paying for the building, is that a possibility as well?
Sometimes it's not our standard go-to approach, but there are circumstances where we've afforded that route for the school. And as you might imagine, it's sort of taking into consideration at what point in time and what the cost would be. Not our typical approach, but there have been circumstances where we've done that before.
No, I know you did a little napkin math earlier. Did you do napkin math on what a rent payment looks like on 6.5 million?
That's a good question. So hang on here. Do a little bit. So you're just I'd say 2 things. First of all, one is Ryan and I haven't worked with your school yet to look at financials and whatnot, but I'd just say broadly, you know, feels like, I don't know, $450 a year to I'd say $650 a year. And I'm doing a really broad range because we don't know what the building looks like. We don't know what the land looks like. We hardly know anything. And so I just say, you know, take that with the grain of salt that it is, but hopefully that at least high level allows you to frame it a little bit. And you know what I'd say, and I think Ryan's gonna start to head in this direction, is that if the concept and the approach feels interesting or right, then the next step would be, okay, let's put pen to paper. But hopefully, at least for today, when we're talking high level about the approach and the solution and how we might help Blue Oak get into its forever home, that gets you at least through today.
Thank you.
And I would say the difficulty for Kurt or I to answer that question, you know, more directly is what we have to look at is, you know, every area is different, is market comps, market rates, you know, and then put it in the categories based on the market conditions of, say, like a cap rate, a typical cap rate in that area through our investor pool. 2 is we don't know the divide of funds. So there is a cost of acquisition capital and a cost of development capital that might slightly differ as far as a rate. And so with that, we don't know if it's all ground up development, or if it's going to be primarily acquisition capital with small renovations, depending on which path you go. So that's where I think he gives the range, and the only, probably the best we can do at the moment. Yeah, and I think that was well said, Jared, is just that, yeah, like the whole point of this is we didn't want to waste a bunch of time on Susan's behalf, on your behalf, and ask you for financials and audits and dig through everything, because we wanted to find out, does this even sound like something you want to pursue further and get some more detailed information from? And if so, it's like, great, let's take the next steps. But we just want to be upfront and tell you we're different. We're not a bank. We're not a bond. There's different paths out there, and you've investigated them all. And so we just wanted to see if everybody wanted to know more or not. So with that, the idea being is that we would, if this were to work out, we'd acquire land or the building by, June of 24. You enter into a lease at that point while we enter it. We finance and manage all of the build out, with the idea that the actual move-in date would probably not occur until about August of 25. And then within about a year, as Kurt said, it could be as early as December, it could be as late as June of 26 or so. But, ideally, what we want to do is transition that into wonderful foundations as soon as possible to give you the path to ownership and have your payments work in that way. And then, we would already understand where the school is, both leadership, academically, financially, all of that with the underwriting aspects, and then trying to preserve as much of your time so you're not spending on board meetings or having to come real estate experts and walk through this whole entire acquisition construction process. We have the expertise to be able to manage and handle all of that for you. So with that, the idea tonight was like, we did the validation, we validating the discovery call that we had tonight. The idea is aligning in on an approach. I don't know if you're ready to align on, we want option 1 or 2. That's, I think, still TBD. And then, today is we're attending a board meeting, for the first time to kind of propose this out there. And then if everybody deliberates after we get off and says, hey, we want to know more, is to set some kind of proposal date, and say, okay, let's start putting pen to paper, between now and then. We would set maybe it's the next board meeting that we'll schedule to come propose. And we would have to propose on those MOU terms or memorandum of understanding that, okay, based on this, knowing the costs, these are the costs associated with the school or the costs associated with charter school capital. These are what the general high level terms would look like. And it would probably take us about 3 weeks, from the point that we get, the more detailed financials to put something like that on paper, legal document that we can actually send out. And then long term is, striding towards that August, fall of 25 entry date into the new forever home. So.
Great.
Thank you.
I feel like you guys have given us a lot of great information and some things to discuss.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions at this point?
Where are you guys located, Ryan and Kurt?
So we are based out of Portland, Oregon. That's where the headquarters are. We started in California. So California is still our largest market and our biggest market. And that is the territory that I cover and fly up and down constantly through California over the last 9.5 years. And but we do actually have quite a few people now spread all over the country. So we have actually our CFO, original founders in the Bay Area. We have our lead project developer manager down in Southern California. We have our facilities acquisition specialist around the Bay Area as well. And there's a couple others down in San Diego and Orange County. We have people located. So, and then some people on the East Coast, Tennessee. Ever since COVID hit, our office is shut down originally, and then all of a sudden people started to go more remote as well. So we have people East Coast and West Coast. It's about 60 people, the organization itself. And I would say that everybody here actually has a lot of deep experience with charter school operations and finance. And that's what makes us a little bit different, is that we actually understand it and the challenges you're actually facing. And we now understand the ebbs and flows, renewals, the political landscape, sometimes the dips in enrollment, we have ways to support that, or ebbs in cash flows. And so, like I said, the fun part is, going to see the kids. The kids are usually smiling kids in seats when we go and visit on campuses and stuff. So it's fun.
Great. Well,
Yep.
thank you so much for that. Does anybody else have questions before we move on? All right, great. Thank you two so much for coming. We really appreciate the beginnings of this conversation and look forward to discussing our next steps as a board.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us. We appreciate the opportunity. All right. Have a good night,
Nice to
everybody.
meet you all. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
All right. So with that, that will take us into point 3, faculty, 3.1, the grade level report.
Hey, everybody. Well, so that was some pretty exciting stuff. So hoping on that things. So yeah, still not much to report. People have started moving into their rooms. The halls have been open since July 1st. And so people are starting to move in. People have been doing their trainings over the summer. And just pretty much everybody, I haven't heard any reports from anybody that anything's been going crazy. So that's pretty much it from faculty. Right, Sarah? I'm throwing her on the bus here. She said she had nothing and now I'm calling on her for no reason. So that's it. That's the entire faculty report. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, yeah, we got a thumbs up from Sarah. You
Yay.
probably
Yeah.
got dinner.
Question.
I had a question too. Nick, Susan Harris, for summer school, what faculty will be on campus for summer school?
Me.
Okay,
And I don't know who else.
We have one open position we think we have filled, but we're not for sure yet, so.
Okay.
I'm not saying.
Great. Laurel, you had a question as well?
Nick, I have a question, and if the rest of the board wanted to entertain it, be fine. It was just my question. Maybe I could meet with you at the beginning of the year. But I'd be interested to hear from the teachers at the beginning of the year before they have a lot going on, just, and it could be in person, but I'd be interested in their perception of what is different about their presentation of the curriculum with a Waldorf focus. Or
Different from the public school room?
yeah, as compared to a public school. So I'd just like to know more about the teacher's perception and presentation of a Waldorf style
teaching at
teaching.
Waldorf in a sense for being still
Pardon me?
public?
Pardon?
I'm just.
I think it sounds like
Yeah,
she's
what was that?
asking from a teacher's perspective.
From the teacher's
Like what's
perspective,
different
Just curious,
from
Curious.
teaching with Waldorf.
yeah, person. And again, I'll take you out to lunch or bring lunch in for you, if that would be a better way to discuss that.
Yeah, I guess I still, what's the question? Sorry.
Was the question clear?
No, could you clarify a bit what you mean?
I'm interested in the Blue Oak teachers collectively, perspective, collectively and individually, on what makes their teaching here different because of the Waldorf perspective than more typical public school.
Yeah, if you want to email Sarah and I that question, we could put it out to the faculty and we can even look into possibly having you come maybe to one of the early faculty meetings if that's schedule permitting for you. Unfortunately, the beginning of the school year is really busy for teachers. So maybe a few weeks after the start, but would you be willing to email us that?
Yeah, I respect your time parameters very, very much so. Okay, thank you, but I didn't check with the rest of the board. I'd be interested, I'll talk to other people about it. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, thank you.
Happy summer.
Yes. All right, well, that takes us right into our closed session items. So if we could be put into a breakout room, Alex and Maggie.
Chelsea, do you want me to step out of the meeting for the first part?
We didn't do it.
Yes, please, because this is our first
Are we-
opportunity as a board to just.
Are we still Public?
Right now we are, so we're not going to start discussing anything.
I just have a question about when the board, when Jim, because we were asked to keep Jim around. Will we discuss what we heard though at a point?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what we're doing during item 4.2.
That's right.
Because that's where we have the opportunity to discuss different payment options and such.
I figured that's why he was asked to stay around, so.
Okay, did you get the invitation to the breakout rooms?
I apologize.
No, I'm not-
And
No,
comprehensive.
actually, I understood you saying, but I also thought another way to tap, not tap, not
Yeah.
to see how the. Oh my God, Jim went and had dinner probably. Is he
He's
here?
still here. He's still there.
Still here, okay. So now we've moved quickly. We're out of closed session. The report out is that discussion but no action was taken. The commitment has been made by the board that action will be taken on this item at the next meeting.
Chelsea, I think you're muted.
Oh, that's never, you should be unmuted. We're good then. Okay, great. So that is the report out. So then that will take us right into item 4. 4.1 is the finance committee report. Vicki, was there anything?
Oh my gosh.
Huh? Finance,
Finance Committee.
It's very short.
Jim gave us the report, well, actually, it was May and early June. We had a drop in winter attendance,
Along with the rest of the state of California.
along with the rest of the state of California. We have, the final monies from the pandemic funds being used here next year, and then those are going to be, used up, aged out. There may be other grants and things coming in to fill it in. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, so.
Okay, good.
Doing great, Vicki.
Yeah, so we have revenue from that for the next couple of years only. And then you had an announcement at the end of the meeting about more monies coming in, large amounts of money. Jim was generally very happy with our finances right now.
Yeah, we have, and that's my report also, we have it's called ERC, which at this point means very little. It's money from the COVID process for employee retention. And so we were able to do the calculations. Thank you, Maggie and Jim and everyone that did the work on it. And so we're looking at sometime in the next 8 months, we should receive about 520 some odd thousand from the IRS. So that is in process. So we're excited for that. That's a good chunk.
There was a good report.
All right.
And if anyone's ready to.
Vicki, was that it?
That was
Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't like just jump in and cut you off. Does anybody have any questions for Vicki for the finance committee? All right, hearing and seeing none, let's go into the facilities report. Susan, we do have some more.
I'll read you the
that.
presentation today.
Yes, we did 4.2.1, but we do still have 4.2. There's, I think there were a couple additional items in the packet that I saw, and then any discussion of the first option.
Right, so as in the packet, I have, since we found out Turner Impact was leaving, I've had 4 different organizations reach out or be referred to me for potential funding partners to replace Turner, basically. So we talked to Charter School Capital. They are one of the larger firms that does this work. They also, I was more aware of them from the lending standpoint. He talked about that a little bit, and Brian talked about that presentation. So they've done that. I wasn't aware they did all this too. So that's there. Red Hook is another one, very much like Charter School Capital, and they have shared, and I think that was all in your packet, their intent and a description of what they're ready to do for us as well. Felt a lot of similarities with them as far as the program. And then Jim hooked me up with a John Fan, who is from the Campanile group. They would work on specifically tax exempt bonds for us to pay for, as opposed to somebody else buying it and then selling it to us, but he would directly do the bonds. His feeling is that's cheaper. The question is the labor codes expectations. So I'm right now, I'm not sure which is the best way to go, whether to go with John and then those 2 companies right above him are the ones that he works with, getting the tax exempt bonds and then doing the financing for us. But we would actually be issuing the bonds more ourselves, I believe. So those are the 2, so we kind of have the 2 options now, whereas we didn't really have an option before of actually going out and getting our own bonds done. So that's what we have. You know, my questions John talked about the fact that we could pay it off sooner, with his program. And so I'm feeling like I've got two people saying we're the best for you, you know how that is, there's two different ways. We can do it our way, it's really, to me, it's do we want, if we wanna go one way, do we wanna charter school capital or Red Hook? If we wanna go the other way, do we want charter school property or, educational facilities, right?
Or company.
You know, that he's the funder.
Oh, okay.
Of it. He would do the bond issues, and then the others would build the school. So, those are talks, the last two charter school property solutions and educational facilities group are really talk about being developers. They don't do the funding, they do the development of the property. So if we did the funding through, the capital, thank you. Then we would need a developer to actually do all the planning.
So the financial obligation to the developer, because I know when we were with Turner Impact, one of the things that was kind of part of the package deal, and they kind of got their money back out of it through the financing process, which really makes sense. I mean, obviously, we're in the middle of a remodel at my house. You gotta pay the guy making the blueprint. So like the financial impact of the charter school property solutions or the educational facilities group, if they're not also the lender and it's not wrapped up in that, how do they get paid for the process?
They get paid from our getting bonds and paying them, or borrowing money to pay them, right?
Do we have any comparison? I know we're super early in the process of breaking this down, but any comparisons as to kind of how they stack up against each other?
Not so much right now, no. I think, I think, and that's part of why I'm hoping Jim is still here to help, because it's sort of like, at this point, people are saying, sign an MOU with me.
Of course.
I can't sign an MOU until we figure out what's best for the
Right.
school. So they're saying, well, we'll do this, but you need to sign an MOU first, or an LOI,
Sure,
depending on what it is.
they don't wanna put forth
Yeah,
much effort if
Yeah.
they're not going to go with them, because then they are working for free.
and I do feel like, that was part of why I felt like Ryan, and their, Kurt, thank you, yeah, their presentation was good, because it kind of really talked about like, this is what's next, and that's kind of the same for all of
Yes.
us.
I felt the
Who do you want? Who do you want? It's just a matter
Right.
of who we want to work with and who we think is gonna be best,
One
for our situation.
of the things that I liked about charter school capital, and I would like to know, as the other organizations too, is, you know, charter school capital does sound like they have quite a bit of experience in California. Which is, I think, important because you have, you know, people coming from other states where things are a lot less expensive, saying, oh, we can do all of these great
And or
things.
all
And then
of
all
the
of a sudden they
tape.
start giving us the number breakdowns or like the red tape, or I didn't know, and this is an issue, and all of these things.
I was almost gonna ask them if they built a school in California since COVID with like lumber development. Has it taken longer? Did they actually have the 2 years? But I figured since they haven't really,
Right.
yeah, we're really early in the
And
process,
they're,
but what
yeah,
does that
they're
look
gonna
like?
give us.
Especially Butte County too with paradise impacts
I really like what they said.
and their permit.
The whole picture of from the beginning to the end, and the wonderful solutions where it's a nonprofit and we buy from them, I like that. The one thing I wish I'd asked is they kept talking about getting students to us. How did they do
I like
that?
to that's the one thing I looked on their
Oh.
website. It's just a marketing agency.
Yeah,
Social media marketing.
so what we hire anyway sometimes to do, they would just help to keep fulfilled because we have to pay back their loan.
We already did that.
But
Well, I don't know that we do it like negative effectively,
Well,
Yeah.
but it's not earth shattering. It's all the same stuff.
one of
Well,
the things that.
their focus will be, we have a new building, let's get
build
a
it.
new building.
Yeah.
So they're,
But look, you got that idea too, just right now. So we got it.
Yeah,
With charter school capital, I did like the concept of it going through the nonprofit, but where my concern would be if essentially it's being built and put into the name of this nonprofit, that we then get gifted this property back after 30 years of paying into it, but we're not actually like, it's not in our name and we're paying a loan for it. So what happens then if there's a problem within that nonprofit where they have
Because it's a
any
pool.
defaults? Because if they own the property, then we wouldn't have rights to it before any debt collectors or anything like that, if they were to default or have an issue or go under as a nonprofit. And so I do have some concerns with that model. I mean, as somebody who works in nonprofit finance, you know, a lot of nonprofits went under during COVID.
And Susan, since we're most likely leading to still going through Chico Unified for the Measure K and getting them to get the land and us just buying the building.
More than
buying our
likely,
building.
yeah.
Okay.
So I
That can be
think-
double issues, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that was my only concern with that. On one hand, I like it, but on the other hand, then really the viability of that nonprofit then puts our property at stake for the long term.
Right,
too.
and that would be a question, what happens if, you know, where are the assets? Because we're not buying the building, we're renting the building until we finish paying it off.
And then they
So-
gift it to us.
And then they give it to us. So
But if
that's-
we pay for it for 29 years and then the nonprofit goes under,
Yeah, but.
what are we left?
Clause
with?
under,
But,
Yeah.
what's
our right?
What's
Because-
our right? We need to.
Yeah,
find that
and
out.
ensure
That would
that
have to be, yes.
So,
ensure that our rights are higher than anybody there.
so I think for me, what I would like is the next step is what kind of questions do you have that I can put out to the 4 agencies that are interested in working with us? And I can get those back to you. And then we can start to go to the next step.
Instead of waiting till next meeting, should we just email you and you can send some and then you can report back to us by next meeting? Or if that's just too fast?
If that, no.
Cause then it'd be like,
That would work, and I know that it's already almost 8:30, so.
And I do think it's important for our questions to get answered in this, but I also think it's super vital that the facilities committee meets and they're the ones that are really developing the questions to move you through this process.
Okay,
Cause that I feel like has more stakeholders from all of the different groups.
and what is their status right now? Do you know anything, Susan?
well, Trisha's in charge with.
That's right,
And
and
she's on vacation.
This is true.
So we're
So I think.
probably a little bit on hold until she gets back.
Sure.
So one of you, if you wanted to, could, you
Reach
can
out.
decide to appoint a second in her place to get it started.
So that we could have a
For like one
meeting.
meeting. and-
Yeah.
Well, but then at least it would establish a meeting and a frequency of meetings. So if there's somebody, I honestly don't have the capacity in my schedule at this point. But
I can be the buck. I can help.
You, but
I think,
Yeah.
I think we do need, it needs to be not just one of us. And
Yeah.
I think it does need. to
No,
be
I'm just saying, but like,
facilities
I will
committee
be like, putting the horn on, like, all right, cause
Yeah.
we're just kind of discussing something
Yeah.
similar and making sure that it's just being followed through.
Seems like it should start out with a meeting that's gonna be, a list of what we're looking for in a property, so if people are gonna be looking for properties,
Right,
then they're gonna know what to look for, like, we
Yeah.
need 4 acres, we need
right.
grass, we need, you know, can't be 5 miles out of town, it's gotta be in town, et cetera.
So,
What about as far as like evaluating the opportunities we have here? I know that the committee can meet and kind of work on it, but do we have a path towards evaluation?
Well,
How do we reduce this number?
that's kind of what I'm hoping Jim can help with.
Oh, okay.
Jim, are you there?
Oh, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, pretty much all of the companies I've worked with say, Jim, that they know you, say worked with you before. So, and I think that's, for me, that's kind of my next step is, how do we choose? What are the, you know, how do we do that analysis? I don't have that kind of information or background.
Yeah, I would add. I think there's 2 complexities that I don't know if any of the parties are able to address yet, because they're, you know, they want you to sign something before they go too far. One would be like you mentioned, the intention is to work with school district land. I'm not immediately sure how that would impact like Charter School Capital's model with the wonderful org. Would there be any issues with the district? Maybe not, you know, just have to clear all that up, like with all parties, how would that play? The other is, no matter who builds it, I think the organization is facing cost risk. If we're talking about enrollment in the range of 300, and the numbers CSC was using, I think, was after taking the credit for the district, I think they were looking at financing in the range of 6 million. Seems fairly realistic. If that goes any higher, we have a cost risk to the org, the ability to continue to make the payment. And so no matter who you're working with, whether you're doing it all, essentially you own it through financing, or you're working with a developer, or you're working with Charter School Capital, developing it and owning it and leasing it to you, the school has to be able to make the payment.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they're going to require comfort in their underwriting before they move forward. And so I guess it's a comfort level amongst leadership. How do you feel about the likelihood of getting a building at a certain cost that would probably meet your level of affordability? If you kind of broke them into 3 categories, talking with John Fan was, he's essentially, he helps arrange the financing. He just helps you get to the market and get the financing yourself. So the org could obtain the debt and would own the facility. So through debt, like a mortgage on your home, but the org would own the facility from day one. Working with a developer like Red Hook, as an example, Red Hook would take it on, but then they would have the goal that in a set number of years, I don't know what the deal would say, but say 3 to 5 years, they would expect the school to go through that option 1 and go obtain debt to buy it. So Red Hook would take it on, but then their goal is in a set number of years, similar to what Turner Impact used to do, we want you to buy this out on your own. So they're acting as the intermediary to get you to the 3 to 5 years out where you can purchase it yourself through debt. Charter School Capital's facility program is coming in where if that's not realistic, they say, we will finance it completely. We will lease it to you essentially for the life of the debt. So they're talking about that 30 years. So if the school is not confident that it could finance the facility itself today or in 5 years, Charter School Capital will finance it for you and lease it back to you for the life of the lease. And you won't have to worry about what the market rates are in 5 years or your affordability at that time. But in all categories, the school will have to meet the market requirements for debt service, like having enough revenue to cover whatever the cost is. If you do it yourself, you only have to meet whatever the set amount of debt is. If you go to a development partner, there's going to be a slight bump up that they're going to need to see slightly more because you have to repay them for the development plus their necessary return on investment. And then in a 30-year lease, right, you're looking to cost plus return on investment for 30 years. So you're basically looking at cost plus for 3 to 7 years and cost plus for 30 years. So yourself is obviously the cheapest, but it's a question of what is also realistic. And I don't know that any of us know that today, but it's getting comfortable with what is a attainable outlook for the school and what is a realistic market cost for what would be a good facility. We don't want to say, oh, I'm only going to spend this much and it would be an adequate facility. So what will an adequate facility truly cost the school? And then we would have to try to model, okay, what would cost plus look like in one of these other deals?
You have those kinds of numbers from your interaction with Turner?
We do. We have some of those. So we could look at what Turner did and ask questions based on that at the other firms.
That's what I was thinking. I felt like I didn't see much of the financials, but this setup in the sense that doing it development cost, that would have something to compare to.
Yeah, we have that started. Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right, Jim, that is helpful to me. That cost risk issue, how to deal with the district, and then really how we want to finance it. And what we're comfortable with is how we want to finance it. It's shorter term, longer term ownership. Where do we get ownership is a big part of it. So we're saying like with John Fan, we pretty much own it and just be borrowing to pay our debts. The others we're kind of sharing ownership in some way, shape, or form and getting it eventually. So those are some big issues. All right. So I'm taking that my next steps from y'all is to get that facilities committee working, to get it started over the next month. And I know Jennifer is here and ready to be on the committee. She's already asking about it. So there's the three of you we would need.
Do we want to try one? I know we kind of discussed a little bit, I can either email. So I can speak with Jennifer and Buck and set up a date.
Yeah.
And say, give ample time to say, this is a chance for some parents to possibly participate. We have a few seats, right?
Right.
So
But you have a big list.
We have a list. He has a list of people.
then maybe email them
so
and be like,
we
and
can-
just set a meeting,
Yeah,
so that-
meeting and say we're getting started.
all right. Sounds good. Add me to that list, please. You can follow up if Trisha can,
Okay.
at least report back.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jim, for your insight.
He's so patient.
Sorry it's so late. I'm glad you're not on East Coast time.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe Jim is like calling from home or something. This is no big deal.
It's not.
Confuse nothing.
Or-
Wait, Jim really wants to be out of your tie.
I also kind of wonder if Jim had 4 foot on.
Alright. Okay. So, with that, you have direction. Let's move into, item 4.3, policy review. And I see item 4.3.1, the parent involvement policy first reading. Is that one that we're going to receive tonight? I did not.
You are
see it
not
in the
going to
packet.
receive that tonight. I
Okay.
left it on there because I just wanted to talk about it.
Okay, great.
This policy can be either very boilerplate. This is what we're doing. We use the LCAP to make our decisions, or it can be much more extensive, which really talks about how we involve parents. And so I went through all of the documents and was working on it and felt like I felt like that we had a need really to engage parents in establishing the parent engagement policy. What is it you want? And rather than just saying, yeah, we follow the rules of the federal government, really, what is it we want to do? So I got to a point and just said, I need actually school get started for me to write this, so I can have parents actually give me input. So so that's why you don't have it.
That's great.
And I think that we will work on that and really focus on it.
I think it would be great to work with parent council on that policy, because I feel like they really lead the charge in parent involvement and what it should look like and could look like. And so I think there's some.
Yeah, and it talks about that, establishing a parent council to be making it. So I'm reading this and going, I really want to talk to the parent council before I tell them they're going to be doing this, because, so I was doing this going, oh, this would be great, but I need to talk to them.
They think this
first.
would be great.
Yeah, they do.
People doing this think it would be great.
Yeah, so so
I like that.
how that process, so there are requirements that I have, like talking about Title I before the end of the second month of school. I will still do all of those things that are federally required. It's just, I really felt like to even say I'm presenting a parent involvement policy
Without the parents
without
that
the
are
parents
involved.
being involved.
Is, and first
Agreed.
PC meeting is in August, right? So that would be something that's
The-
on there.
The first piece of
agenda?
it will be the first week of September, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's the first Monday, first Tuesday in September. Yeah, but that's only 2 weeks.
and is that something that we could put onto the agenda that you can meet with Nicole for him?
Awesome. Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments on the parent involvement policy or thoughts on how Susan should proceed with that?
Only that I have on it is I know that the opportunity is around grandparents. And we probably have a certain number of guardians as well. So
It's,
potentially it's a family involved.
yeah, that's what I would, this is
Well, that's
what,
great
this
suggestion.
is what is required, and
Yeah.
it's actually, when I've written it, it's parents and parents, yeah. Parents, guardians, and families or something.
Yeah.
Great.
It'll be a little different, but that's.
Thank you for the equity though.
Yeah, no, that was a great thought.
Are you on the equity task force yet?
No, I'm on that.
Okay.
Meetings.
Out of real estate. All right. Let's go ahead and keep this meeting moving. Item 4.3.2, the gun safety policy first reading, and that was in the packet. Did anybody have any questions or comments regarding the policy that was presented in the packet, or revisions they'd like to see made prior to our second reading? Yeah, it was really hard for me to read because I hate the fact that that it's something that's important for us to have in this day and age. And so as a parent, it was really hard for me to read this, but also as a parent, it was I'm really glad that we are looking at it and not pretending like this doesn't exist. So I personally thought it was very well written. Did anybody else have
Can
any?
you roll it down a little bit? Or is that the bottom? It's the end of it. Okay.
Yeah, I thought the language is good. And it's so good to talk about annually. I mean, be in Butte, there was a recent incident, right? So.
How do we inform parents annually? Is that
We do
a,
it annually, that's the requirement, it will be. A part of the parent handbook, and putting a
Okay.
piece in the back of the parent handbook that is. Annual informational requirements, so there's cyber safety, and there's one other, but I'm required to tell annual, so that'll be there, it'll also be posted on the website. And then I'm adding into the list of annual trainings that we have for students, so.
trainings for students?
Yeah, so we have informational meetings, I should.
Right, right.
When we have BCOE come and talk about
Tobacco and
drug
drugs
use.
and guns and all the fun stuff.
Yeah, so that it will add it to that list, so we regularly talk about it at the school.
Thank you.
The only thing I had on it was just that the very last bullet kind of seems to be the first bullet in my mind. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking, scroll down to the actual memorandum.
Oh, you're looking at
This is
the,
a different, this one, yeah.
yeah,
I just thought that the very last bullet really is kind of the main message to parents. It's gonna be your fault. So I
Okay.
thought maybe that would deserve to be the first one.
okay,
Yeah,
that's a good point, this is, in reality, this is actually the template from the state.
oh, okay.
With my name on it. So, but I will, consider.
Yeah, consider it,
Yeah.
take it or
moving
leave
that
it,
up,
or
yeah.
whatever.
So,
Yeah, that's a suggestion to the state.
Yeah.
We can get rid of them.
absolutely,
No,
I do.
that is a good point of like, maybe parents should understand that they are actually the first responsible and we will
Yeah.
support them in
Yeah.
that, but
And, yeah, that
we
is-
can't be the only one.
Yeah, it's not, and I've said that, to the few people that have talked to me about it, it's like. We're getting into an area where. We're the school, we can talk about it, we can teach about it. But just like we can't go home with you and tell you to eat right, we can't go home with you and lock up your guts.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's.
Right.
I think, yeah.
Great. Alrighty, well, since it is a first reading, there will not be a vote. But it sounds like we had a recommendation for the movement of a bullet point, which, was there any other components? Okay. All right, hearing none and seeing nothing from our very small audience, we will go ahead and move into item 4.3.3, the fiscal policies and procedures annual review.
This is a governance requirement that you look at these once a year. There they are. We have not made any changes to them since last year.
Did
Well,
anybody,
that makes it easy.
did anybody have any thoughts or questions or things that they?
Policies.
And the only recent changes are the travel, right? That was the only one we did a couple months ago.
That's right.
For staff.
We just raised.
Yeah, and I know that since we've reviewed this last, we did get a credit card for the school, but it was already written into as part of the policy, which is
Something to, yeah.
and so, well, I felt like it was still adequate, because it did, that was one of the things I looked for, I guess is what I'm pointing out, is to make sure that, because that was a fiscal change that we made, to make sure that our policy covered it. And from what I saw, it did. So.
Yep.
Anyone?
And there it is again, credit cards, yeah, so,
Yeah,
nope, no
there's an entire
changes.
section. Okay, thank you for reviewing this. That takes us to our final item from administration, our executive director's report.
Given it to you in writing, so I'll just let you read it if you have any questions on it.
Excellent.
It's quarter time.
Yes.
It's what?
Quarter
It's
quarter
fine.
time.
Okay.
Most of
Anybody
it's going
have
on
any
with all the
questions?
summer things that go on. So.
No.
Yeah, did anybody have any questions on Sydney? No.
Oh, and the finance, did he say what we're at for ADA for next year? I know I missed last month. I didn't know if there's any more that came through. We have registration.
Yeah, I
coming up.
had a huge huge tours today, so
Oh, wow.
I'm not in a place where I can tell you what I'm.
Yeah, okay.
Maggie, can you scroll down just a little bit? Thank you.
It's great.
Yeah, it's great we were able to get the ERC.
Yeah.
Not everyone qualifies, so I'm glad that we did.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, and so that brings us to the end of our regularly scheduled programming.
It does.
Please note, item 7, the next meeting, Tuesday, August 15th at 6 p.m. I will see you there. That will be my final meeting. Maybe I'll bring cookies. That's my preference. Alex set a good precedent. All right, that takes us right into item 8. Did you have something? I'm sorry, Vicky.
I'm not gonna be here. I'm gonna miss that meeting. I'll be in Mendocino.
Then I guess you and I definitely need to meet before then.
Yeah.
To
So
finish and wrap this up.
It's August 15th.
August 15th. Yeah.
And school starts the 22nd, right?
Do you guys have?
I will be here, but tired. I'll be coming from Wisconsin.
Have you been added to the board calendar yet? Like you should have those.
Yeah, like I got an invite for tonight.
Okay.
I just don't have that one on the calendar. I just-
Maybe
We
you
have,
can find
we
it.
have four
Yes, it's
next
nothing.
month. We checked that already.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that one.
Trish just said she'll be here.
Will be our -1. Pretty sure to check out.
Laura will be
Yeah,
here.
I think we're. That takes us into item 8, and that is an adjournment for tonight's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming and sticking it through and having really good discussion and conversation tonight.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a real board meeting. It's a real board meeting.
it's hard.
8:30.
It's been a while since we've had these
44.
long meetings, but.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You did very well leading it. Appreciate it.